Hi, this is Gary. Welcome to today's video. So for the past few videos we've been taking a look at pens, but let's be honest, that's only part of the story. It's also important what you're putting in those pens, what the ink is like and what the ink's doing. Now in the past I've been using this Rhodia pad here, and what I do is I've just been doing little swatches in the pad of ink samples and inks as I get them. I've also been using these. So for each ink I've been doing a little card. Again, this is using Rhodia paper. Now one of the issues with that, it's a little bit on the flat side. It doesn't really show off the colour. So a couple of months ago I got these. These are from Colouring, and these are allowing me to do better swatching to get a better idea for the colour. I'm just flicking open a few here. So what I've decided to do is I need to move and redo all my swatches using these colouring cards. So I thought today, let's take a look at some of my inks, at some of the samples, and I'm going to swatch them. I'll also do a little bit of a writing sample that will be done in my Oxford notepad, but I'll do it with some Tomoe River paper as well. So join me now down on the mat. Let's take a look at these inks, let's swatch them together, and let's get a conversation going about how we can use them and what we think of these different inks. So thank you for joining me down on the mat. What I've done is I've got, to be honest, what will be the key equipment out so I can show you what I'm going to be doing. So I've got a glass dip pen. This will make it easy for me to get the ink out and to do my writing with. I've got this metal letter opener. And what I'll be doing is I'll be using that to actually do the swatching with. So I'll be dipping that into the ink and then wiping it on the cards. And then I've got these colour O-ring cards. That's what I'm actually going to be doing my swatching onto. So let's move these all out of the way. I'm going to fetch in the first ink. So my first ink is by Robert Oster. And I will be honest, most of my inks today are Robert Oster inks. This one is called Royal Red. Just fetch in my pot. I've got the Dragon today. Just give that a quick invert. Let's take the lid off. Why I use this pot is I'm fairly clumsy. As you can see there, I've literally just opened it and now I've got ink all over my hand. I'll have to just quickly wipe that off with a bit of cloth. So this is my first ink. So my current swatch that I've got for this, I'll just move them up there. This is some Rhodia paper that I've cut into rectangles. And this is what I've been using to do my swatches on. As you see from this Royal Red one, it's fairly flat. So the whole idea is I want to be able to swatch onto these cards and it should look a lot nicer. So we'll go for the first one. Now, I'm fairly new to swatching, so if there's a better way of doing it, I'd love if you could let me know. Because, this seems to be fairly, best way to put it is a bit of a pain. I'd love to be able to do, I wish there was something I could use which would be easier to get the ink up with. Last one, I think. There we go. Pop that ink back in there. I've got a jar of water at the side where I'm just quickly rinsing off the tools as I use them. So let's fetch in the pen. We dip that in. So what have we got here? We've got Robert Oster and the ink is Royal Red. Okay, so now we need to leave this for a few minutes to dry. Whilst that's doing, I'll pop these off to the sides. I'm going to fetch in my notepads. I thought what I'd do is also just do a little bit of writing on a couple of notepads. So this one, it's by Oxford. It's the one I use when I do most of my reviews. And it's Robert Oster Royal Red. Let's do a little bit of a swipe with it. The other one I've got is this one here. So this is Tomoe River. So again, we've got Robert Oster Royal Red. By using a couple of different notepads, I'm hoping we might see any differences that come through using the ink on different papers. Because certainly one of the things I found is, if I'm writing on cheap paper, we get certain behaviours, whereas if I write on that more expensive paper, it can sometimes behave so differently and look so different. It's quite amazing really to think about it. I mean, we can actually see that here. So that swatch is still drying off a little bit. Let me just fetch it in and fetch in the one I did on the other paper. Look at the difference there. This is very washed out compared to what I'm seeing on here. And even the writing on both of these was done using that glass dip pen, and you can see the difference in the colour. So that's the first ink done. Let's pop this all away and we'll look at the next ink. So the next ink, staying in that same red family, is this one here. Again, it's another Robert Oster ink, and it's called Rubine. Let's take a look at this one. Now, some of you might be saying, what are these numbers that I've written on the top? This is just so I can easily see what ink is where. And where I use this, let me take that lid off and I can show you. I have got this master ink list in a Rhodia notepad. So here, I'll show you only part of it. What I've done is I've assigned each one a number, and then when I'm looking for, say I want Robert Oster Rubine, I know it's number 12, so rather than having to look at the label on each of the jars, I just look at that top number and I can quickly get to that ink. So the Rubine on my old way of doing it, so it is that ruby type colour. It's definitely a lot pinker, I think, and a lot brighter. So let's take a swatch of this one. Let's see what this one looks like. This one, I seem to have got more on my letter opener this time. As I say, I do find this a little bit of a finicky process, which is why I don't often do it, and it's something I'm trying to force myself to do more often, because I do think we'd see better colours on these than what I do on that paper that I'd been using. Now this pack, it cost me $20 for the pack of cards and the O-ring, and that was for 50 cards. So I haven't really done too much. I think this will be about the 15th or 16th card that I've used. Well, there's enough for now. Again, let me just wipe all this off. Fetch back in the glass pen. So we've got Robert Oster Rubine. Again, look at the difference in colour just by using a different card. I'll move them up so they can dry off. Fetch my notepad. So we've got Robert Oster Rubine. And now with that Tomoe River pad, you can certainly see how much wetter that the Tomoe River paper is. And you can see, to me, again, I'm seeing slight colours. On here, this is more the salmony pink, whereas this isn't as vibrant. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what that looks like when that's dried. Let's move that to one side. So here we have our Robert Oster Rubine. So again, let me move this out of the way and onto the next ink. So the next ink, again sticking with my theme of Robert Oster inks, this one, Fire Engine Red. This is a really lovely bright red. I've had this in a couple of pens so far, and I really like the look of this ink in these pens. So my old swatch, here we go. So again, I think you really can't see the beauty of the colour come through in this, because it seems very wishy-washy on this paper. As I said, this paper, it's not cheap paper. You know, it is nice fountain pen friendly paper, but let's see what this ink looks like when we're doing it on here. Now, to me, when I see Fire Engine Red, I imagine a really, really bright red colour. And this doesn't quite hit the mark for me. I can see where they're going with it, but it's not what I would call fire engine red. You know, it's a nice red. Don't get me wrong. I like the colour. I like the shade that it gives. But it's not that fire engine colour that I would expect. And maybe that's just, you know, you get these expectations that stick with you throughout your life. And then when you see something, you think, well, that's not quite what I expected. So I'll just wipe that off. Let's move these up. And again, let's fetch in the notepads. I know I'm going through this quite quick, but let's be honest, it's not the most exciting thing to see ink being swatched, but I think it is quite interesting because you get to see some different colours. So, Robert Oster, fire engine red. Pop that up to one side so it can dry off a bit. Fetch in the other paper, the Tomoe River. So of the three, I've got to be honest, I do prefer the fire engine red. That to me seems the nicest red of the three. But as I said, it's still not exactly what I expect from a bright red ink. Let's clear this all out of the way. We're now going to move from the red family into some blue inks. So let's pop these off to one side to dry. My next ink, we're into the blue family. And again, we're going to be sticking with Robert Oster for most of these. So this is Robert Oster Australian Sky Blue. One of the things I have been looking for is a really nice blue ink, because yes, you can get all the standard type of blue inks, but I want something with a little bit of personality to it. Because again, to me, one of the beauties of using fountain pen and fountain pen inks is you can really fetch out the personality of your writing by using different coloured inks. Just going to actually, to make this a bit easier for myself, just move that off to one side. Let's have a look at this then. So here's my old card. You can see this is a really nice blue, really pale blue. But again, here I've used a Q-tip on this, but it looks wishy-washy. That's why I'm hoping using these colouring cards, we're going to see a better representation of what the colour is. So here we go with this one. Let's do that swatch part first. You know, looking at this, you can see why they're saying it's sky blue. Although, to me, again, doesn't match what I expect when I think about sky. But I can see where they're going with it. Just a little bit more. If you can think of a better way for me to be able to do this, I'd love you to drop it down in the comments. I'd love to learn something from doing this, just so it makes it better for me going forward. Okay, let me wipe off that and let's fetch in the dip pen. So we've got Robert Oster, Australian, I'm just going to put Ost, Sky Blue. Again, when I look at these two in comparison, this is so much more vibrant. You can really see more colour coming in, which I struggle to see on the other paper. So let's fetch in my notepad. Might need to move these right out of the way so I can get this notepad in. Here we go. So we've got Robert Oster, Australian Sky Blue. Quite like this colour. It'd be nice to see how it compares to some of the other colours that I've got. On the Tomoe River. This notepad, this is, I believe it's B6 is the size, so it's fairly small, but it fits nicely into my pen carry case, which means that I always know what I've got. Now, here we're actually working at the back of it, but at the front, that's where I keep a list of the pens that I'm using each particular month. So I know what pen and what ink, and like here, where I've changed the ink that was in pen number 2, I can just keep track of that for the month. But that's not what we're here to see. We're here to see the swatching. Clean off my last pen. Okay, you can see these reds now are really starting to come through, and you can see the subtle differences between the three. To me, this one has got a bit more red. This one's darker, but this one is really nice and vibrant. Let's move these out of the way. So here's our swatch again. Can you see the difference? You know, as I keep saying, this looks really washed out compared to this. So I do like these colouring cards quite nicely for showing off the colour of that ink. So our next ink, we're staying with that same family. Robert Oster. This one is called Blue Water Ice. One of the things I'm interested to see from today's video is actually being able to get a better comparison between a number of the Robert Oster blue inks that I have. So let's pop that there and fetch in our card. We'll fetch in the previous one. So this is definitely a deeper blue. We'll see what it's like once it's dried on the colouring card. I will, at the end, fetch all these back in so we can see them all. Let's get the trusty implements ready. So here we go, dipping that in. Oh, that looks nice. You can really see it's darker already. Now, I'm not sure if it's coming over on the video, but the snoring you can hear is my trusty house dog. She's protecting the house so well that she can do it while she snores. And she's decided today that she wants to spend the time in here with me, which means I get to listen to her snoring all day. And unfortunately, depending on how the mic's feeling, it means you get to hear her snoring as well. Okay, let's wipe this off. One of the things that I don't like about swatching, you can end up with ink all over your hands. So that's something to be aware of if you're going to be doing this for the first time. Fetch in that dip pen. So, Robert Oster. Blue Water Ice. I like this. Lovely colour this. I haven't had this in a pen yet, I think, and I may need to do something about that quite soon. Let's move those out of the way. Let's move it there, that'll be easier. Let's fetch in the notepad. So we've got Robert Oster Blue Water Ice. You can really see the difference between the two. This is definitely a lot paler. I like this Blue Water Ice. I think this is going to be one I need to get into a pen soon. And then on the Tomoe River. Looks quite nice, doesn't it? So let's move these out of the way. Take another look at these colours. I like that. I really do. And it's a much nicer shade than I'm seeing on this Rhodia piece of paper here. Seems got more saturated. Really like the look of that. Put that to one side to dry. So the next one, it's a very similar colour and it's a very similar family. Robert Oster Soda Pop Blue. Now, I don't know if you can see what I'm going for. I'm going for some very similar colours so I can work out which one I prefer, and then based on that I'll know which one to buy a full bottle of. So my current colour card for this, you just fetch that in. For fetching the other two, this one really sits in between the two. That's a bit silly, I should have changed them orders around, but never mind, we are where we are. So this is like middle type blue. So let's start going for our swatch with this. That was the best one I've done so far. I think one more go. There we go, pop that back in the holder, quick wipe off, and let's fetch in that glass pen. So we dip it in, give it a bit of a shake to get rid of any excess. Robert Oster Soda Pop Blue. I can't be honest, I think I prefer that one to the Blue Water Ice at the moment. Let's see what it's like when it's dried though. I'm just going to pop that to one side. Let's fetch in the notepad again. So here we go. Robert Oster Soda Pop Blue. Yeah, I like that. Trouble is, I like them all, and you can't have them all. Fetch in the Rhodia pad, not the Rhodia, sorry, the Tomoe River. To me, again, I can see where the name comes from. This really does remind me of the blue soda pops that you can get in a lot of shops. Let's pop this to one side, quickly wipe off my pen. So again, let's fetch in them cards. And definitely, I know I keep saying this, much nicer colour. So we're staying with the blue family, but we're going to go for a completely different shade of blue now. The next one, again, strangely enough, is a Robert Oster ink. It's called Great Southern Ocean. Now, I quite like this. I've used this a number of times. Let me get rid of the old one first because I can't put the new one in until I've moved that old one out. Here we go. My old card here, you can see it's a much darker blue. It's got a lot more, to me it's more of a grey blue. And it does, I've seen the Great Southern Ocean, obviously living in Australia, and where I used to live a few years ago, we were very, very close to the Great Southern Ocean. So I can remember what that looks like, and this really does bring it out to me. Just fetch in that card. And let's have a look, what does this look like on this card? I mean, initially going down, it's very dark. Now, while I'm doing this, if you haven't already, why not just step away for a couple of minutes, hit the subscribe button so that you subscribe to my channel. What that will mean is that you'll get new videos coming up in your queue as I release them. Now, at the moment, I try and release 2 videos a week. Some of them are about pens, some, like today, will be about inks. And then I'm also trying to look at some, which is how I use my pen and ink. So we can actually see what the full story is because, you know, a pen on its own isn't really interesting because it doesn't do much. An ink on its own, again, can be quite nice, especially when you pair it with the right pen. But it's really, what are you using it for? How are you using it to get the thoughts out of your head and down onto paper? That to me is one of the beauties of fountain pens, and it's one of the things which a lot of people never really seem to talk about too much. They'll talk about the pens and what they like, they'll talk about the inks and what they like, but you don't see very much of this is how you can use it, this is the benefits you can get. And so I'm trying to start a whole series of videos where I'm looking at that, and I'd love to see in the comments, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something you'd be interested in? Is it something that you think you could get value from? Please drop a comment and let's kickstart that conversation because, yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts. One of the things I'm learning here is I really struggle to talk when I'm writing. That's so much different in colour. I'm going to put them off to one side so that can be drying whilst we do our notepads. So here, oh, Look at that. This is what I said about getting ink on your hands. And now it's all over the paper. You just quickly dry that off on a bit of cloth. So we've got Robert Oster. Great Southern Ocean. I love this colour. As I say, I have used this a few times in some of my pens. I've just been daft. I've just wiped it off before doing the Tomoe River. Never mind, here we go. Let's fetch it in the Tomoe River paper. Just move that up so we can see what we're doing. You know, this to me, it really is evocative of the ocean. And, you know, that's really good because I've always lived by the sea. I grew up by the sea. So it's nice to have something that reminds you of that. I'll just quickly move the notepads out of the way. Let's fetch that back in. This is such a big difference of swatches between the new one on the colouring and the old one on the Rhodia paper. And I think it is better to reflect how this ink performs, especially how it performs in a pen. So yeah, I'm liking this. So again, we'll put these off to the side, give it time to dry. We will have another quick look at all of the swatches at the end, by which time they'd all have had a chance to dry, and we can see if there's any sheen or anything like that coming off them. So we've only got 3 more inks to go. The next ink, again, it's one of my favourite colours. I've used it in a few pens by Robert Oster. And this is the last of the Robert Oster inks that we're going to look at. This one is it's called Tranquility. What a gorgeous name for an ink. Let me just take the lid off that. Pop that into the holder. So for fetching the old card, look at that gorgeous colour. I mean, it's starting to move towards the greener shades. I know when you talk to a lot of people, there's all sorts of different colours that they can call these. To me, it's a greeny blue. And I like to keep things simple. There might be a proper term for it. I don't know. If there is, again, I'm quite happy. Drop it down in the comments because then you're educating me. Let's fetch in the card and let's do our swatch of this one. I think this is a gorgeous looking ink. Look at that. Looks even better on here. I think, now, again, I might be wrong. I think this is more, is it teal or moving towards the teal family? I say for me, you've got red, you've got yellow, you've got greens, you've got blues, you've got oranges, purples. A lot of the other colours there, I know that there are names for them, but I really struggle with how do you classify it. And what I'm really looking for is, do I like the ink? Do I like the colour? This one, the answer to that is a definite and resounding, I love it. I think it's a really nice colour. I'll just give this a wipe off. Okay, let's fetch in the dip pen. So what have we got? We've got Robert Oster. Tranquility. Really like the colour of this. Let's move these off to the side. Fetch back in that Oxford pad. So this is the optic paper. This is a really nice fountain pen friendly paper. And this is what I use for all my reviews, because then I know I've got a consistent paper to go with my pens and inks, so I know what I'm getting. It's not the best for sheen, but it's still nice. Robert Oster Tranquility. Do you know, the more I use this thing, the more I like it. Just going to move that up. Let's fetch in the Tomoe River paper. So we go here. Robert Oster Tranquility. Absolutely love it. Really like the colour. To me, it's because it's an unusual colour that you see in a fountain pen. A lot of pens, you know, and we're all guilty of this. When we're at school, you got that, what I always call schoolboy blue. I know it's not very politically correct, but it's the blue that you use at school. And let's be honest, it's usually Parker Twink. And that's why I like to see these different colours, because I think the different colours really allow you to introduce that sense of personality. It lets you fetch in a little bit of you into your writing. So it's not just words going down on paper. There's actually character coming through in it as well. Just move those out of the way. Let's pop the lid on this one and we'll fetch that swatch card back in. So again, look at the difference in colour. And this is why I wanted to use these colour rings, because we're really seeing a different shade completely coming through. Yeah, as I say, I think people would call that teal. You can see more on here, more of the green than you can on the old one, which is more of a blue colour. So it's really starting to come through on there. Let's pop those to one side to dry. So my last two inks, I'm going to move away from the blue family and I'm going to move into the green family. Now the first one I'm going to do, we've got a link to the previous ink. The previous ink was just called Tranquility. Well, this one is by Colourverse. It's called the Sea of Tranquility. Now, one of the things I like about Colourverse inks is how they use unusual names. So the Sea of Tranquility, I believe that's an area on the moon, and they have got a lot of inks which are themed name-wise around astronomical things. Let's fetch in my old card. So we can see here, it's a gorgeous green. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll most probably be aware I love greens, and this is a different type of green. It's not that bright foresty type or grassy type green. It's a really lovely colour. Let's get in there and let's start swatching this. Now the swatch samples for this, there's not as much as I get with the Robert Oster inks. This over here in Australia is really expensive. Well, certainly to me it's really expensive. For a bottle of this, you're talking $50. Whereas, you know, some of the other inks I get, you know, I can get a bottle of Diamine ink, a 30ml bottle, for about $9. The Robert Oster inks, it's been a while since I bought one, but I think they're around the $15 to $20 mark. So they're a lot more affordable. But look at this lovely colour. It's a bit of an awkward one to get the ink onto here. I do wonder sometimes if it's worth using a syringe and actually putting a few drops from a syringe and then just smashing it around rather than trying to get it out like this. That's something I may try in another video. I'm not going to do it in this one because I want to keep it consistent throughout the whole video in how I'm doing this. But as I said before, if you can give any suggestions on how I could do this any differently, I'd love to hear it. Because it's only through sharing information that we really learn. And for me, one of the outcomes I want from this channel is to be able to kickstart conversations and kickstart the learning, so we all learn something on a regular basis. So let's get the ink on our pen. So Colourverse, I have to be careful how I write this because I'm used to using a U in the word colour. Colourverse, Sea of Tranquility. Gorgeous colour. Let's move these to one side so that can dry off a little bit. Let's just fetch in the notebooks. So here we go. Robert Oster. Oh, it's not. Silly Gary. It's Colourverse. Sea of Tranquility. Okay, let's do a little smudge. Lovely colour. Fetch in the Tomoe River paper. See if I can get it right this time. Colourverse, Sea of Tranquility. I mean, just look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? To me, can't beat green. Although that Robert Oster Tranquility is certainly very, very close, but I think that's because it's that greeny blue colour, so it's still got some green in there for me. Let's just clear these notepads off. Get rid of this ink. You don't need to see my cheat sheet with my ink list. Let's fetch that card back in. To be honest with this one, I'm not seeing as much of a difference in the colour. I think this is definitely a little bit darker on here, but even so, the green tones are very similar, especially when we're up at the top here. But even so, you know, even this beautiful colour. Let's clear this one out, leave that to dry a bit more. And now we're on to the lucky last ink. Now this ink has not yet been in a pen. I've had it for a while. When I show you it, you'll understand why it hasn't been in a pen so far, but I do have some coming which it might work in. This is by Kobe. And it's number 60, Kobe, Foreign Museum Mint. I like the colour of this, but it's not really been suited to any of my pens because when I look at it, it's very pale. Most of my pens up till now have been either a fine or an extra fine. I'm only just getting into the broader nibs, so I have got some broad nibs coming, and I've also got a couple of stub nibs on the way. And to me, the paleness of this ink, it needs that wider nib. I don't think that it'll look really well in one of those smaller nibs like the fine or the extra fine. Let's do our swatch. You can see how much ink is in this bottle. You know, this sample bottle's still virtually full. I mean, this to me is a mint colour. Reminds me a bit of the mints that I used to get when I lived in the UK. More so the spearmint flavoured ones. So I don't know why, but the spearmint always seemed to be, to me, a pale green. And maybe I'm getting that wrong, but that's how I associate it. And again, you know, as I've said, you get these associations, and once they're in your head, they're quite hard to get rid of. But you can see how pale it is, how wishy-washy it is. You know, I'm really trying to put this on nice and thick. But you can still see it's like a washed out colour. Right, I'll wipe this off. Just pop it back in the stand, and we fetch in the dip. So this is Kobe, number 60. Foreign Museum Mint. Do you know, it's a really nice colour when you see it being written with. Let's see how well it goes in my notepads. So I'll fetch this in. So here's the Oxford one. So Kobe, number 60. Foreign Museum Mint. Do you know, I really like that. It might be worth trying in maybe a medium nib. Maybe I don't need to wait for a broad nib. Tomoe River. Wow, it looks nice there. Kobe, number 60. Foreign Museum Mint. I'm just going to redo that because I've got some black ink. I'm going to use a clean finger. That's really watery. That is very, very watery, you know, and so pale. But although it's pale when I wipe it with my finger, it's actually quite nice when I write with it. Let's get this notepad out of the way. Fetch this back in. There we go, that's better. Now they're both in the camera. I like the look of this. Again, it's a beautiful green colour. On the old one, well, you can see how it goes really watery towards the bottom, how it goes a lot paler. Whereas certainly you can see a lot more of the colour on here. Let me get rid of this ink sample. What I'm going to do, I'll fetch all these new swatches back in. We can have one final look at them. So here's the reds. We've got the Robert Oster Royal Red, which has got that more of an orange colour. Rubine, yeah, that's got that ruby type colour. Fire Engine Red, not as bright as I expected it to be. Still a nice red though, you know, it's one that I'm happy to use, and I am actually using this in a pen at the moment. My blues, these three, so Robert Oster Australian Sky Blue, Robert Oster Blue Water Ice, and Robert Oster Soda Pop Blue. I'd put them all in the same family. You know, they all look very similar to me, just different shades or different intensity of blue coming from them. The Robert Oster Great Southern Ocean, that gorgeous grey colour is really coming through. Really reminds me of the ocean when it's angry, and you can see that coming through when the waves are coming in and you've got that darkness in it from them dark clouds above reflecting off the water. Really lovely colour. We've got the Sea of Tranquility, beautiful green. We've got that Foreign Museum Mint, that really pale green. Then we've got this is that greeny blue, Robert Oster Tranquility. On here though, I can really see the green shades coming through. Some really lovely ones that I can see. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please hit that like button, give it a thumbs up. Have you got these inks? Come on, what are your thoughts on these inks? Are there any similar ones that you can suggest that it may be worth my while to try? I'd love you to drop a comment down below. Let's kickstart the conversation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.